Good evening, everyone. This is Clyde Sharadi from Africa Media Australia, and tonight we are talking about the recent event in Queensland, in Brisbane, where two young African Australians were in the front cover of a local newspaper, the Courier Mail, to name it. Not for the good reasons, as usual, when Africans are in the headlines, often in this country, is for the wrong reasons. Obviously, there are issues with regards to COVID. Many of you have seen the two young girls who apparently were coming from Melbourne. They went to Sydney and then entered Queensland, and they did not disclose that they were in Melbourne. They have been since tested COVID positive, and that obviously is an issue because Queensland has been trying to keep itself free from COVID, unlike Melbourne here where we are. So it's obviously an issue, and a lot of people in the community see that as problematic. The fact that these young girls did not disclose that they were in Melbourne is obviously an issue. We don't deny that, but I don't think they deserve front cover coverage of that type. So I'm going to be talking about this tonight, and I have with me my guest, who's a community leader in Queensland, Benny Ball. Benny, how are you today?
I'm good, Claude. How are you?
Good. How's Queensland going with everything that is happening out there?
Well, we've been actually enjoying everything here for the past few weeks or months, as cases were relatively low compared to the other states. Unfortunately, in the past 2 days, we've seen this dramatic situation with the two teenagers coming from Melbourne with the virus, and that has exploded. But we're still waiting for the results, so everything will be clear within the next 2 weeks or so.
Okay. Now, obviously, I understand that this is creating a bit of a shock in the community. What's the reaction from the African Australian community in relation to this?
Well, it is very unfortunate that we've seen the headlines that we've seen in the media. Not really surprising because of the usual reporting when it comes to some of the communities, depending on their background, obviously. We, as a community, we believe such a conduct is very reckless, obviously, so it's very responsible, and nobody's happy for what has happened. And I think it is important for everybody to know that the action of the girls actually put their own family members at risk first. And they put the members of their own community at risk. And therefore, it is collectively the community, regardless of racial background, to actually say this is reckless. But the headlines that we've seen, especially Courier Mail declaring that enemy of the state, there has been a swift reaction in the community, and obviously there are safety concerns in the community because the whole community has been subjected to potential risk, and that has been the concern throughout. And the messages that we've been seeing on social media being targeted at some of the friends to these girls have been completely unacceptable. So now is a very bad time to stir some divisions, and such headlines obviously create division in the community. And the situation we are facing at the moment require a united front. So we need to work together in order to fight the virus. So there's no time for division. There's no time to stir race kind of politics. So the community is so disappointed by that.
Okay, I would imagine the community to be disappointed, obviously, in relation to this. Now, is this something that you guys get a lot of the time in Queensland? In Melbourne here, we do get it. There's a whole lot of things, as you know, that happens that happen in Melbourne with all the young people doing some crazy stuff around, and the Murdoch press especially, but not just, a few other media outlets as well. They grab anything they can and splash it out there to promote the negative. Is that what happens in Queensland quite often as well?
Yeah, that has happened over the years. So that's been happening. There had been a situation where the stories have been twisted by the media. Obviously, anything related to mostly the African people is reported very negatively. There are a lot of people doing great things out there in the community, but nobody really say much about them. So this is not something new, but it is very unfortunate that we've seen some incidents over the past few weeks, and nobody actually mentioned the racial background of those individuals. So there could be a lot of examples in Melbourne and also here in Queensland, but nobody actually released the identities of those individuals who actually breach the regulations. So our position is that individuals should be held accountable individually. So if you commit a crime or if you violate some rules, then you should be held individually accountable, but in accordance with the procedures of the law. Like anybody else, this should have been a matter for the police and the court. So the police should have actually investigated the action of the girl and then refer the matter to the court rather than putting it on the media in the way it was.
Absolutely. Let me remind those who are watching with us, we would appreciate if you would participate in this show. And one of the ways to do that is make comment, ask questions. You can do that through comments. You can also, if you like, come to the studio. We can send you a link and you can intervene using audio visual means, that basically a video through video. So tell us where you're watching from, and we want the community to participate in this, because this is obviously very important for all of us. Now, Benny, what would you suggest to the African Australian communities in Queensland and more broadly in responding to this type of incident that not just obviously affect the two young ladies in particular, but the overall community? Because we've seen the comments on the internet, we've seen everything that is happening there. So it's something that is vilifying the whole of the community. What would be your suggestions as a community leader?
Thank you, Claude. I think as a community, we are facing two crises. So the most important thing is safety of the community members. At the moment, we want to make sure that the message around health get out to every single individual in the community. That's one thing. Number two, when it's come to this particular issue, defamation, racism, or whatever you call it, there are appropriate actions that can be taken. And I would like to ask the community members just to remain calm, because there's so much emotions running high out there on social media, and none of that is very helpful, to be honest. So we need to work together. And if there have been violations of the law, privacy law, or whatever it is, so then there's a way to deal with that. So we don't want to engage in some sort of online fighting on social media. It's not going to help in any way. So we need to focus on health. We need to engage the broader community. We need to reject any kind of collective labeling of the community because of individual behavior. So the message to the community is safety. Now, I'm very concerned about the fact that some innocent people might be targeted by extremist radicals, those who, for whatever reason, don't like people from particular background. So that's my main concern. And we've already seen a number of parents who are concerned about taking their children to school because they don't feel safe. People think that you could just be victimized based on your physical appearance. Again, this is not a new thing. So, and what I'm saying to the community is that there are avenues, there are ways to deal with those things. And if you have been targeted, if you experience any racial abuse or some vilifying messages, please get in touch with us. and we know what we can do about those things. So people can be held to account based on their action. So there's no room for racism, to be honest. And no single person in the community is happy about the conduct of these particular girls. But that should not justify the behavior that has been directed toward the community.
Now, talking about the some of the avenues that people can take in relation to this type of incident, obviously, people can make complaints. They can lodge complaints with the regulatory body for Australian Press, which is the Australian Press Council, APC, that is the regulatory body. And it's important that these sort of things are documented, even though we know that it may take time for them to do anything specifically. But in the local context in Brisbane, Benny Ball, other than that, what are some other things that people are considering? I mean, I saw some comments on the internet about people wanting these two girls to take legal action because it's a breach of privacy laws, and I'm not sure whether that is necessarily right. That's up to the lawyers to decide. But what are your sentiments? What are you hearing about what people would want to see happen?
To be honest with you, I think I've been trying to caution people when it's come to legal related matters. So what we really need to understand is that there are actually investigations underway, and it would be very inappropriate for people to make comment about legal actions or anything that need to be done. So the most important thing is that people need to be vigilant for their own safety. And when it comes to the situations of the girls, I believe they will have their lawyers, and people can work together with their lawyers when it comes to any potential cases in the future. So at the moment, I understand the police is still conducting some investigations into not only what they've just done, but there are other things that are coming up. I've been hearing in the media that they're looking into their tribal movement and their involvement in some of the incidents in the past. So I'm not sure about all of those things. But I think if people are not careful, they could also jeopardize the legal prospect of this particular young girl. So if you are supporting them, you need to be very careful what you're going to say, your comments, because there are investigations going on as we speak. And we should be very careful as to what we say. So the most important thing now is the general community safety, making sure that everybody is safe. And if you receive any racist comment directed at you, so it's important that you let us know. We have Queensland Human Rights Commission, and yesterday I organized an emergency African community leaders, and about 36, 37 leaders from different African background attended, and I invited the Human Rights Commissioner to come and also brief us about their positions. And earlier on, he issued a statement trying to reject and condemn scapegoating, and it is a very powerful statement from the Human Rights Commission.
All right, so the human rights. Actually, there's a bit of an echo, Benny. If you can reduce the volume a bit from your end, I'm sure that's gonna help to remove that echo if you can. While you do that, suppose you were saying that you had met with African community leaders and the Human Rights Commissioner, and what were some of the outcomes of that meeting?
The meeting was very broad. So the meeting initially, I convened the meeting in terms of the response to the crisis, because we are looking at two things, as I mentioned earlier, Claude. We do have the health issue, and it is very important for us that we need to understand the seriousness of this particular virus. And we have a lot of community members who are vulnerable, those who don't speak English or speak very limited English. So now we've got more than 50 different languages, and 1% of those is actually translated in various by various agencies. So what we've been doing is actually relying on ethnic community leaders translating the messages for their own members. So I did call for that meeting just to brief the community, ethnic community leaders, to make sure that they take the message out in terms of the new cases in the community, and making sure that all locations have been identified, and people who visited those places can actually monitor their symptoms and make sure that they self-isolate and get tested. So that was one of the important agenda items. And also to engage the government and talk to the government, make sure that they're empowering the community. So we want the resources to be given to the community because they understand their own member, they understand where they can take the message to. And then before that item, so I did invite the Human Rights Commissioner to come and hear from the community leaders what's actually happening out there, and for the community leaders also to ask in terms of the legality of what's going on, and also in terms of the authority of the human rights, and if there's anything that we can do as a community in terms of those who might be targeted in the community, because there have been already a number of reports allegedly with people being targeted because of being of African background. So we wanted the Human Rights Commissioner to be aware of those cases, and for us to know that if you have been targeted and you are a member of the community, then you can actually make a formal complaint to the Human Rights Commission. But there's a threshold that you need to meet for the commission to actually accept your complaint. So we need to clarify all of those things so that we know exactly whether the action you are considering can actually meet the threshold of your case being accepted as a formal complaint by the Human Rights Commission. Yeah.
I know with the Human Rights Commission, the threshold is a little high. But with the APC, the Australian Press Council, there's not much like that. In fact, you can lodge your complaint online. And I think it's important for people to do that so that these cases are documented. Thanks very much for that, Benny Ball. Now, I'll take a few questions from the audience, and I again encourage those who are watching, please ask your questions, make comments. We'll be happy to address them. Now, this one says, Benny, what is your preparation steps in rectifying this racial vilification of the media and the public judgment? Now, I suppose they're probably giving you too much power, but you got some role to play in the community in addressing this.
Well, first of all, I think we need to understand that some of these media outlets, some of the channels and all of that, that's where they make their money. And I've been cautioning our community members to make sure that they're not reacting in a way that would keep headlines throughout for a long time, because that's going to play into their own interest, the interest of those particular media outlets. So it is important for us to calm down and then consider our options very carefully, without just getting out there and make comment here and there, and then the stories keep going on and going on, and that's what they want, obviously. So they provoked the reaction and then see what happened. So,
sorry, Benny, sorry to interrupt, but you don't want people to be too quiet either, because obviously this is an important matter. People have to speak out and say that this is unacceptable. There may have been better ways of addressing this, rather than naming and shaming these people. This is an incendiary headline, enemies of the state, all that sort of thing. You don't expect people just not to do anything, is it?
Yeah, but I agree with that. What I'm saying is people taking appropriate action. So sometimes if you are not careful, so whatever you're trying to do can actually backfire on you.
Yeah.
So, and it is very important for our members to understand what they can do in order to be more effective. So we also need to make sure that we promote our own stories. For example, while we're fighting with negativity, we also need to engage and make sure that we promote ourselves. We don't want anybody to tell our stories. So we have great people doing great things out there, and we don't want to be known for negative things. So it is important for our people to engage in a way that promote our own positive stories while we're taking appropriate action that will actually maximize the prospect of succeeding if people were to take action. So my only message is that people should not make comment that would actually backfire or play into the interest of those people who are making negative comments.
Do you know if anybody has been, or maybe yourself as a community leader, has been in contact with the family of those two girls? Because I would imagine if you just put yourself in the shoes of those girls, obviously not justifying that they did something that is obviously not smart. It's a pretty silly thing to do. But if you put yourself in their shoes, they are COVID positive, apparently in a hospital or some sort of confinement, and then they've got all this media thing in their head. It must be quite hard for these young girls. They're only 19, so still pretty young, and as the saying goes, young and stupid, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. There have been a lot of communications going on, and we also want to respect their privacies. And I've actually heard about the stories. I've listened to the video of the one of the mothers of the girls, and I'm also concerned about the potential risk they're putting themselves in. So what I've been saying to some people is that advise them to actually decline media interview and not exposing themselves and their identity. So it is important for them completely not to say anything to the media. But unfortunately, I've seen some videos coming out in the past few hours, and that potentially put them at risk because given the current atmosphere. So it's not the right thing to do. It is not the right thing for their family to engage in media commentary at the moment. So there are other appropriate action that can be taken.
Okay, and this other viewer says, gentlemen, how many roughly cases of COVID-19 in our African communities? Well, that's a very broad question. There's quite a lot of people in the African community.
That should be a question for the Department of Health, and I think they don't actually look at the
background, the ethnic background
of those who have been affected. So we can only heard about these particular cases, these 3 cases, just because of the way media put their identities out there. But otherwise, nobody ever mentioned about the racial background of those who have been infected. I think we are actually trying to send a message out there to our community, to be honest with you, for a number of reasons. So we don't want people to feel embarrassed or shameful if they are infected by the virus. That's also another issue. So if people keep it secret to themselves, they are actually causing serious risk to their own family members, to their relatives, and the community members. So in the past few hours, I've received reports of community members who may not be willing to go for testing because they are fearing of the fact that maybe their identities could be released if they were found to be positive. So we are trying to counter that. It's not in our best interest as a community. So it is very important for us to make sure that we engage and inform our members about our status.
Because I suppose one of the things that this incendiary headline on Courier Mail does is that it actually discourages people from coming forward when they are tested positive. So they are causing a lot more trouble for the community, even though they think that they are actually wanting to protect the community by calling these young girls enemies of the state. When you see headlines of this type, people would normally come forward and want to be tested and not hide, will think twice, and therefore the risk would be much higher for the community, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why we want to make sure that if we play into that, then we will be the victim as a community, because we are naturally very social people. We like to be together. We like to visit each other. And if we don't go for testing, if we don't monitor the symptoms and all of that, then the victims will be us, community members. And this is where we need to be absolutely clear that if you have flu-like symptoms, you must get tested, you must self-isolate until you get the result. Very important.
Okay. And has the government or the health department in Queensland been proactive in engaging with you besides this incident? How has the government engaged with African Australian communities locally to help circulate the information, make sure people know what to do and they keep safe?
Yeah, I think we're working very closely with the government. Initially, when the crisis hit, the response from the government in terms of engaging with the grassroots community was very slow. The messages coming from the Department of Health were very slow. They're not reaching the community. And also, we had a situation where many assume that all the languages have been translated. So I had to intervene myself and came up with a list, a very long list of languages spoken in the African community, and they could not believe that these languages are actually spoken here. They think that I from somewhere, maybe these languages are only spoken in Africa. So I say these are the languages spoken here, but the issue we actually encountered was that they have not been accredited and they don't have certified translators. So the community itself took the responsibility, engaged ethnic community leaders who speak those dialects to actually voluntarily translate those messages for their own community. Because I said, when it comes to health, we are not going to wait for the language to be accredited first. We are not going to wait for certified translators. So every single person in the community must get the information. So we are not going to wait for all those legalities to be actually overcome. So since then, we've been working very closely with the government. So I've had several meetings with the Minister of Multicultural Affairs and the directors within the Ministry of Health. And also, I had a meeting with the Health Chief Officer in the event, I think 2 days ago, actually. Yeah.
Okay. So, well, it's good that something is happening there. Have you had any contact with the media? Sometimes when these things happen, you may want to call this courier mail and have a chat with them and say, I'm a community leader, and I understand obviously your publication has created quite a bit of an incident. Can I speak to the editor or whatever? At least, that conversation sometimes can go a long way, even though many of them are quite I mean, they don't want to engage when they've done something of this type. But is that something you've tried, or anybody in the community has tried?
Yeah, so there's communication there. So we've not been successful yet, but communication is underway between our leadership and Courier Mail. So I've had interview today on Channel 9, and there have been a couple of other interviews as well. But we are in the process of communicating directly with the Courier Mail.
Okay. Hopefully, they agree to have a chat with you and hear from your perspective. But it's there's a bit of a mindset in the media, especially the Murdoch press, that is quite unhelpful. Another Facebook viewer says, some of my closest friends tested positive and yet refuses to isolate. He infected my other friends, however, he refuses to isolate. What is your message to the Dinka community?
Look, I feel very uncomfortable hearing those things, and it is disappointing if those sort of behaviors are happening out there. This is a very serious virus, and I think, again, as I mentioned earlier, I want to reiterate the importance of actually letting people know that you've got the virus. And if you actually love your family members, then you should be letting people know about the symptoms. So I've heard about those stories, and they are quite concerning. And I think we need to have a grassroots campaign to make sure that people understand the importance of getting testing and self-isolating. I completely don't understand where the stigma is actually coming from. So there's nothing shameful, there's nothing embarrassing about that. It is actually shameful if you don't inform your family members and relatives and community members that you've got the virus. That's the most shameful thing anybody can do. So it is very irresponsible and reckless and selfish for anybody not to actually inform their friends, relatives, and family members that they have the virus.
Sure, and there's also a significant portion of the community, as far as I understand, that doesn't even believe that this COVID virus is actually real. You see a lot of people commenting on that and say, well, they're all fabricating this whole thing, and people are dying. Only those old people who are going to be dying anyway, and anything they have a vulnerable health situation. What do you respond to that sort of thing?
To be honest with you, it is very irresponsible, and it is really reckless and stupid of anybody to actually come up with those conspiracy theories. So I've heard about all of those things, and I actually approached the authorities initially, you know, at the beginning of the year when this was happening, and I said, it is important that we translate all these messages, whether the languages have been accredited or not. So we really need to get the message out there, because we are leaving the whole community feeding on conspiracy theories on social media, you know. So it is very important that people get the right information, reliable information, consistent information from the reliable sources. So to be honest with you, we need to engage those people, and they need to start from the grassroots. The campaign, the community need to be empowered, and it is important that they get the right information. And people need to know that there's no medicine, there's no vaccine, you know. So they have to be very careful, and they need to know also that it doesn't matter whether you are actually young or old, you could die from this virus. So that's a very important message for people to understand. So I would say it's very reckless, it's very irresponsible for anybody to actually think that there's nothing like that. When people are dying, a lot of people are dying. And it doesn't matter, even culturally as well, for us, it doesn't matter what the age of the person is. So you could be like 90 or 100 years old, but we still need you around, you know? So it is really concerning, and I don't know why people would think like that.
Well, Benny Ball, I want to say thank you. We're coming to the end of the show. I appreciate that you have given us the time. I know it's a very busy time for you, and you're being solicited from left, right, and center in your role as a community leader in Queensland. But you have managed to get some time to talk to us in relation to this. We're going to keep an eye on this. Hopefully, it doesn't escalate any further. We'd like to be able to know more about the girls, actually, because from a welfare perspective, they would be in a much difficult situation given everything that is going on, even though what they did was not the smartest thing in the world. So keep on doing the work you are doing there, and we may have you again sometime soon, depending on what is happening, if there's any development in that story. Maybe just your last message to the community, both in Queensland as well as more broadly in Australia, before you go.
Thank you very much, Claude, and I thank you as well and the listeners for the opportunity. My message to our people is that we need to take this virus very seriously. And it is very important to remain vigilant. And for our community members who are in Queensland, we want to treat every person in the community as if they have the virus. So we must maintain social distancing throughout. You must get tested if you show symptoms like flu-like symptoms, and we must avoid any unnecessary gatherings and visit to relatives and families. It is very important that if there's nothing important you need to go and buy. You shouldn't be going out there. I know it is very difficult for us culturally even to say to people, don't come for a visit, don't come to my house. But at this particular time, in the interest of our own community members, so we need to change, we need to adjust. And this is going to be there for a very long time until a vaccine is actually found. I also want to make sure that people look after themselves, because this is putting us in a situation we've never been in. We are naturally people who want to interact with each other. We want to hang out in group. We want to socialize. But now that's not happening. And this could have a toll mentally. And it is important that we support each other. It is very important that we check out. And if there's anything happening, reach out for help. And I also want our people to engage with the system. So I want people to understand how the system works. And I want people to utilize the system for their own benefit. So a significant number of our people don't really engage with the system. They complain in their own houses, and that's not going to help us. We live in a different system. We live in a different society. And in order for us to succeed and to even challenge and stand up for our own interests, we have to engage with the system and understand how the system works. All these institutions, whether it's around our children or whether in terms of employment and everything, we need to understand how the system works. We need to engage with the system, interact with other people, show them who we are. You know, if you don't interact with people, it is very difficult for them to understand your values and who you are as a person. The more we interact with everybody, the more we get out there, understand the system, the more we can be accepted into the society, and the more they can actually know that there's no difference. So it's just a matter of different color, but we have the same values, and it is very important for us to understand that. Thank you.
That is very well said, Benny Ball. Thank you again, and have a good night in Queensland. Until next time, stay blessed. All right.
Thank you. Our thoughts are with you and your people there.
Yeah, we are in Melbourne, man. We're much worse than you, but don't worry, we're still surviving. We're not going anywhere.
And I've been talking to a lot of people there, and it's quite concerning what I'm hearing, to be honest. And
all right. No problem.
thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Bye-bye.
night. Bye.